All right. With a few minor technical difficulties, we're able to start the 10th episode of the Grow With Grevera podcast. And I am your host, Thomas Bell, and I'm CEO of Grevera. We have a product called Harvest Cloud, and I'm joined by Alex Houchins, as always, our CTO. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good to be back. Excited about today's episode and our guests.
Yeah, we have two really awesome guests joining us today. They're both representing Toms Tumbler, which is I'll let them explain that, but it's basically a machine trimming company, and Mikey B, I think, has experience as a grower, so we're going to talk a lot about that. But first, I'll let you guys get started. So I'll start with you, Erick. You want to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little about Toms and what your background is, and then we'll get Mikey B's intro.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Erick Gustafson. I'm the director of sales for Toms Tumbler. I joined last year, and I've relied heavily on Mikey B for being able to explain the cannabis world to me, because I come from more of a manufacturing background. I was in the military for a little bit, and then I was with Hilti and with Duraflex, so more on the manufacturing side. And that's actually how me and Thomas connected, is when we were talking about manufacturing and the lean kind of processes, because I know with the Harvest Cloud, that's what you guys are focusing on. So for us, that it's the same thing where we're trying to help growers become more efficient. And so and that's how Mikey B got involved with Toms Tumbler. So I'll let him kind of explain how his journey to Toms.
Yeah, Mikey, you want to give us a quick introduction, your background a little bit?
Sure. My name is Mikey B. Born and raised in Mendocino County. I've been farming for about 25 years. We started when I was, pretty young, freshman year in high school. And basically, as a grower, we're always trying to, simplify things and speed things up and get things done in an efficient manner without destroying the flower. And my buddy, he had this machine and he said, come over and check it out. So I went over, I checked it out. Within 20 minutes, I got online and bought one myself right there. And then in the next 2 weeks following that, I showed probably 15 of my friends, and about 10 or 11 of them bought the machine on the spot. So I told everybody when they bought the machine to tell Tom, Mikey B sent you. And then like 6 months later, Tom called and offered me a job.
Oh, that's
Very
perfect.
cool.
That's cool. So it's that standalone, it's that exceptional, where if they just see it, if the grower just sees it, it almost sells itself, it sounds like.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, the second, it's hard to explain, because every machine in the market that I've ever seen pretty much destroys your product if you're not helicoptering over the machine, watching it constantly. And Tom's, like, I mean, if you have it at the right dryness, you're looking at like a 45-second tumble to a minute tumble, and it's like pretty much ready to go. I mean, you got to do a little bit of cleanup. If you don't do the cleanup on the front end, which most people, once they buy the machine and they've run it a few times, then they understand what they need to do on the front end to make it so you tumble it, dump it out, put it in a bag, and send it on its way.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
I was just curious about that, because in my experience, I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and so the trimming that I see, it's like the machines that I've seen growers use, they just don't do that good of a job, right? Like they set those machines off to the side, and they have to rely on hand trimmers in order to get it to that threshold, I guess, that retail wants it to be at, whether it's dispensaries or what have you. Like what are those major challenges? Like, is it possible for a machine trimmer to, when you say clean it up on the front or the back end, like, can you expand on that a little bit? Like what that means?
All right. So, excuse me, if the way I've got it dialed down, I usually have a crew of 8 to 10 people that work for me. When I first used the machine, it was just bucket down, put it in the machine, and then we'll clean it up so we can put it in the bag. But what I've learned is if you if you know what's not going to fall apart, because a lot of people try to leave the bigger nugs, that they've got like the top with the two little nugs on the bottom that are always usually kind of flimsy. And usually when it starts tumbling around in a machine or goes through a machine, those things fall off, and then you have a stem that you're going to have to go back through and cut off. So if you bucket down correctly to the size that you want in your bag, you can take your smalls, separate the smalls, and not even trim the smalls, and just have the choice buds. And then there's, I call them blockers. Some people call them crow's feet, but they basically cup the bottom of the flower at the base. And if you remove those blockers and you bucket down to where it needs to be, your tumbling, once it's done, is virtually, you can do a once over. And maybe, it takes me about an hour. If I don't do the stuff on the front end, it takes me about an hour to clean up a pound once it's gone through the tumbler. Gotcha. But if I do the cleanup on the front end and get it to the right dryness, it's literally like you can do a once over, maybe even pick up one nug, and then anything that needs to be cleaned up, you could just take another nug and just kind of clean it with the nug. You don't need scissors at this point. Like, it's pretty much, you can clean it by hand.
Wow.
Put it in the bag.
And Alex, too, kind of what you were saying about how other people have had bad experiences with machines and then leave them in the corner. That's honestly one of the hardest things for us to get over is introducing people, because it's bladeless technology that we have, right? So with other machines, it's usually bladed. So it cuts into the product, it degrades the product, right? Exactly what you're talking about, where if you lose more in the value of your product than what you gain in labor savings, obviously nobody wants that. And so
exactly, that's the major challenge.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, and I'm interested. I want to dig into a little bit about Mikey B's background as a grower, because based on what Erick shared, a lot of really interesting experience there. But before we get into all that, we were talking a little bit before we started on the podcast, Erick, about Toms and Tom himself and what the company's background is and how it kind of got started. If you don't mind, you want to share a little bit about the company and how that sort of evolved?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, Tom Brueggemann, the man, the myth, the legend, owner of Toms Tumbler. He is a grower or himself. So we like to say, this is technology built by growers for growers. And he was a stuntman in Hollywood and actually grew for the stars and would trim. And he just got so fed up with how long it would take to trim by hand, where he then invented this bladeless technology. So again, it was something that preserves, the trichomes and crystals and, keeps it looking nice, but just speeds up that process. So that was back in 2013 that he kind of came onto the market with it. And as the cannabis industry has really grown in size and scale, then our machines also have grown up in size and scale as well. Because that original machine, it could do about a pound at a time, and so now we've got the machines that can do up to 1,200 pounds per hour. So
yeah, which is kind of mind blowing to me. Like 1,200 pounds an hour. Like, are there actually growers processing that much, like day in and day out?
Yes. Yeah, there's obviously not as many right now, but there are a few out there across a couple different states. And people use it in different ways too. So, I mean, some growers, it's something where, again, the bucking is taking them a long time. So it's something that's going to take them, a few weeks to prepare it. And then it only takes them a few weeks a few hours for them to run what's taking them a few weeks to bucket. So, yeah, trimming, used to be the bottleneck, and it's no longer kind of the bottleneck right now. So.
Yeah. And I find this fascinating because my wife has started to watch this show called Victorian Farm, which is like this experiment about where these academics kind of are living the life of a Victorian farmer, and they do all the stuff as though the Victorian farmers would. And one of the things they talked about was, I forget what they called the machine, but there was an invention around that era of a machine that was designed to process wheat. And before that, they literally had people by hand taking off each of the wheat nodules off of the wheat plant. And it was like very, very labor intensive. And it would take like one person like 20 minutes just to pop off all the things on the plant. And they invented this thing, this mechanical device that would actually did all that for you with the machine. And you could do like a whole batch in just a matter of an hour or something. So I find it interesting as we go through cannabis, we're going to go into more of an automation future, mechanical sort of world. I'd especially like get Mikey's perspective on that. Like, how do you see that? Because like, there's a lot of people that from the craft cannabis world that I think kind of like balk a little bit about like machine trimming and these other machines. Like, do you see that yourself when you talk to growers? And how do you think it's the future, or what? How do you see that sort of evolving?
So that trimming sucks. Like, I don't know anybody that likes it. And if they tell me they like it, yeah, they might like it for maybe a week. And then, like the last farm I went to, they're still trimming and they're not going to be done until probably the next time they harvest, which is like the amount of to scale that people are doing now is getting crazy. And especially up here, all the farms that I go to, everybody's trying to figure out the quickest, fastest way to save money without destroying the product. And there really is there's no machine on the market that even compares to Toms. Like everybody that's seen it, I've had 3 people in 4.5 years tell me they don't want the machine. One out of the 3 people, they used it, they didn't pay attention, they ran it for 15 minutes and it destroyed their product because they ran it at full speed. They didn't listen to a single thing that I told them, and so they wanted to return the machine. But everybody that sees it, and you can, when somebody's watching the demo, you can see the wheels start to spin. They're like, holy shit. Like, I can't believe that this is doing such a good job. And then they pick it up and they look at it and they're like, that's better than hand trim. And some people like the look of hand trimmed, and that's great and all, but I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, everything that goes into the bag after the tumbler is hand trimmed. So it's just more uniform. So you're taking out let's say, I mean, like my buddy's farm, he's got 100 employees every day in his little area, and all of them have a different their own different way of trimming and how they do things. So nothing really looks uniform, which is horrible when it comes to the purchaser, because they're like, well, we don't like this, that's too shaggy, this has got too many smalls in it, this one wasn't even cleaned up right. But at least with Toms, you can run it through and everything is homogeneous. It all looks the same. So it makes it's an easier sell. Plus, it saves so much time and so much money for anybody to say no or not even try it. It blows my mind, because the amount of, I know how much it costs. It used to be, you used to pay somebody $200 a pound to trim. Now we're down at like 100, 125. And then the people that have got the machines are paying people like $50 a pound. And they're making probably more money than they would if they were doing it the original way. Because if you do it the original way, you have to trim the smalls. And I tell everybody, like before we start, do you guys want your dessert first or do you want to eat your veggies? And everybody goes, oh, I want the dessert. And I'm like, all right, it's up to you. And I bring them out all the nice choice nugs, and then they get done with that. And then I bring out the small buds and they're like, oh, shit. So a pound that would normally take them, let's say it takes 5 hours, when they have to trim the smalls, because everything has to be trimmed. It's not like you can just pick and choose what you want. Like, it's all got to get trimmed up anyway. But to trim a pound of smalls could take you a day and a half. So you're going to make $150 on a pound in one day, or you could literally go through 10 pounds or 8 pounds. I've got 3 females that can do 8 pounds in 8 hours. If they go over 8 pounds in 8 hours, then I automatically bump them up to a higher pay bracket so they can make more money. But they're all stoked because it's 4 hours on, 2 hours off, 4 hours on. So it's a 10-hour day, but halfway through the day, I want them to leave. I want them to go for a walk, go do whatever they need to do, then come back and get back into crush mode, because I don't let any of my trimmers trim smalls. It's a waste of time. Like I'll just make sure that they take the blockers off and make sure that it's bucked down, and then put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then I'll tumble that for a minute and it's done. And there isn't a single person on this planet that could do that in that amount of time as good as it does for the price. Like, I mean, every other machine's almost double the cost of Tom's. So for me, it's a win-win-win situation all the way around, because my trimmers are happier. They know they don't have to trim smalls, which is huge. And if they really want to get after it, then they've got to hustle. But usually after 4 hours of trimming, they get bored. They get tired. Their morale goes down. So I give them 2 hours off in the middle of the day, and then they come back and they're super pumped. And I can, the money I'm saving, I can actually buy them food, because before it was like, bring your own lunch, bring your own drinks. I'm not providing any of that for anybody. Done that for the last 25 years, and it's like babysitting people. And now everybody's just super pumped to come to work because they know that they don't have to trim smalls. So it's kind of funny, but it's definitely a game changer in my book.
Yeah, and Mikey B, you're still a grower too, right? Are you still?
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
cool. What's
For
your?
sure.
Do you mind if and just I don't want to pivot too far away from that, but um, what's your grow style these days?
So I like the growing in Manzanitas. I don't like full sun.
Oh, interesting.
And that's the difference with the Manzies, and it's just like doing light dip. I don't have a place to do light dip. I don't have a flat enough spot at my spot to do it. So I'm more out in the hills, and there's a ton of Manzanitas around. And I've cleared out the Manzies, and that's what I've done, since the inception, because we're back in the day, we were hiding from the helicopters. Like, you hear the helicopter and everybody leaves the work site and they go and they hide. So, and not only that, but if it's in the Manzies, it's kind of like light dep, except most people that are doing light dep don't have a UV reduction cover, like a shade cloth, which I highly recommend, because what it does is it takes the sun out from beating down on the flower, which will actually make the flower darker and not so lime green as everybody wants it.
Okay,
And
so that's fascinating, because here in Portland, I'm not seeing any kind of restriction on light whatsoever, right? It's like lights are set on timers. Of course, I'm talking indoor, but still at the
right.
same time, like, those principles that you're talking about right now in the outdoor, can they be taken and transferred to indoor?
I think so. You know that, like, the old 1,000-watt ballast and the big hoods. So have you ever grown indoors?
Yes, I've helped with medical operations that are indoor.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
with that exact system that you're
okay,
talking about.
cool.
Yeah.
So basically, what I've noticed, in at least in the rooms that I've built and used, depending on your ceiling, how high your ceiling is, but everything on the outside of the light. So it's almost like a coliseum. All those plants are strong, sturdy, chunky. They're reaching for the light, and then everything in the middle that's directly under the hot light
It's often
doesn't get
scorched.
it
Could
doesn't
be,
get big.
right?
It literally doesn't want to grow. It's literally getting fried, and everything on the outside is reaching up for the refracted light. So I basically, in the Manzies, I just cut holes, and I still get the same quality. I get better quality than most people do in the light depth in the Manzies, because it's providing shade, and the terpene levels are much higher. The color of the bud is much lighter, and it just tastes better, I think. Like, I mean, I do all organic anyway, so like, if you're not doing organics, you're going to lose a lot of the terpene profile and the taste. But that's how, I mean, I used to have 6 properties, and we did 25 plants in the open, because that's what we were allowed to do. The sheriff would always make fun and basically say, there's one thing the residents of Mendocino County know how to do, and that's count. because you could literally fly over and it's like you see 25, 25, 25. And anybody that went over 25 got a visit from camp or the task
Sure.
force. So, I mean, what's the point? You don't need to go over 25. If you go over 25, you get a chance of getting busted. So we always kept it at 25, and then I just went back to the Manzis because I hated having everything out in the open. Like,
Right. Yeah. And I'm just curious if there's like a sweet spot there when you're controlling the light. Because when I think about, with these hood systems, you think about access. I'm always thinking temperature, airflow, and light,
yep,
and thinking, and I see that exact pattern that you're talking about, where it's like at the centermost part of the plant, it's most likely to get scorched, right? And in those systems, you're supporting, bending, that kind of thing. But like this idea that you could mitigate that light, that's really interesting, trying to apply those principles. I was curious about your thoughts, but yeah.
I honestly think, I mean, I've never tried it inside because my indoor room that I have right now is very limited. But if I had a bigger room, I definitely would get a 30% reduction shade cloth, UV reducted shade cloth, just to keep it and make sure that everything stays a lime light green color, because the plants out in the sun, like up here, the temperature fluctuates anywhere from 90 to 115 degrees. And then at night, it drops down to like 48, 50. So you've got this huge temperature variance. And then everywhere in the county is a different, so it's like its own little micro, what's the word I'm looking for? It's its own little environment. So
Microclimate, yeah.
You've got the guys that are up in the hills, you got the guys in the valleys. The guys up in the hills and the guys in the valleys, they could be growing the exact same thing and have it turn out completely different because of the microclimate that it's in. And the people that are closer to the coast, their plants don't get as big, but they get chunky, and they love the ocean, the mist, the fog that comes in. You just got to choose the right strain so you don't get mold.
Right. That's fascinating. It's like these realistic conditions that you find in the microclimates can be applied, I think, potentially to indoor cultivation to get better terpene profiles. It's not just about, and I'm breaking a little bit with conventional wisdom, but maximum air, like light and airflow. And we strive for consistency, but at least trying to say, what is actually producing complex, better terpene profiles? Well, it's these microclimates you're talking about. It's these conditions that are more realistic, that where the plant isn't always having access to maximum condition, like optimal conditions, where it's not being babied, can produce a better quality product at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, myself included, what the hell is a manzanita?
So it's a short tree, but it looks more like a bush. It's got red bark, and it keeps its color throughout the year. So like it's green, and if you fly over it, you can't penetrate through the Manzis unless you get close with the chopper wash to move them back and forth. But it basically camouflages it. It's just a local tree around here that's very, it's everywhere. And it's a really good firewood. It burns really, really hot.
Nice. So it's what's interesting is that you have, as the plant has evolved over time, and you've been in a long time, you said you've been doing it for 25 years or more, right? How the sort of echoes of the prohibition past is going to be like fed into the modern cultivation, I think. Like for instance, I guess you grew it under the Manzis to keep the government from seeing it, basically, right? And but you've actually discovered that that's in your view, a better way to actually grow the plant.
I think it gives it a better terpene profile. I think it's stronger, it's louder. Like once it goes into the bag, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. But it also comes down to it always comes down to the dry and cure process. But for me, like having it in the Manzis and out of sight, I don't have to worry about people stealing because nobody knows where it is. And if they do accidentally step into the Manzis and see it, chances are they're probably going to turn around and leave. Unless they're, you know, really going for it and they're going to try and steal something. But I prefer the Manzis to direct sun just because it smells better. Like I've got a stronger nose to it, and it seems to be obviously a lighter green color. Yeah, it's just something that I've always liked to do. And everybody that sees it, they all say the same thing. They're like, "Oh, dude, you just took me back 20 years." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, dude, come on over, check it out," you know.
And where did it all start for you? I mean, being a grower, I read a little bit about your bio that Erick shared, but where did that, like, can you kind of share a little bit about how you got into doing it and what made you continue doing it?
So, okay. So 8th grade, my friend got in trouble and he was being taken away by the police. I don't know exactly what it was for, but he threw something at me and he's all, "Get rid of it." And I threw it in my pocket, had no idea what it was, took it home, opened it. That was the first time I ever saw weed in my life. And I was like, "Holy shit, I got weed." And so I smoked that, and I'm ADD like crazy, ADHD like crazy. So farming really helps me because there's so many different things that I can be doing. And if I get bored with one thing, I can go do something else and then come back. But it was my freshman year. My friends gave me some seeds, and I sprouted them in my closet, and then my dad found it and threatened to call the police. And you know, they say whatever your parents tell you not to do, you're going to do the opposite. And that's what I did. And I hung out with a lot of people. Like in high school, all their parents were growers, so we always had access to it, and I loved smoking it. And then once I got into actually growing it, I mean, it's provided so much for me in my entire life and everybody around me that I think the main reason why I wanted to grow it is not for the money at all, even though that was, you know, a major factor in it, but it gave me something to do where I didn't feel pinned down. Like my dad's a physical therapist. He's got his own practice here in Ukiah. He wanted me to be a PT, and I was like, "Dad, I can't do that. I can't sit in an office all day telling people how to fix themselves." I go, "You're good at that. I could be good at that, but I can't sit in an office for 8 hours in a day. I just can't do it. Like I'd rather go dig trenches and dig holes and then fill the holes back in than sit in a room and, you know, behind an office or a computer and try and like make a living." Like I just never, I like the outdoors. I like, you know, hanging out like in the woods, the redwoods, like everywhere up here is pretty beautiful. And I didn't really understand just how rad this place is until I left. And when I went to Southern California, I really understood how much I missed Northern California, because every single friend that I made in Southern California was from Northern California. Like every single one except one. And it's like, well, I should just go back to Northern California because Southern California was just too fast paced for me. So that's pretty much how I got into it and why I do it. But yeah, I've been doing it for quite some time. And when Toms Tumbler came into my view, I was just like, holy shit, this is a game changer for me. And it's just helped me like save money and time. And I'm just very, very thankful and grateful for the plant and every person that I've met along the way. Because I don't think I've met a single bad person that grows weed. I've met some sketchy ones, but they're also doing other outside extracurricular
activities
that are not part of what I want to be a part of. But I mean, pretty much, I'm going to say 99% of the people that I met through the cannabis industry, they're still my friends.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah. and you've had your thumb on the pulse of the culture for such a long time, just based on where you're from.
Yep.
How do you see the industry changing? Like we're removing pain, we're introducing automation where it counts to get rid of that pain, whether it's, in trimming or what have you. Do you think I'm really curious about your take on outdoor versus indoor and like the trends, because ultimately it comes down to, do people want flower? Are they going to, where do you see this going? What's your personal take?
So I will smoke. I will choose outdoor over indoor every single time. I mean, I'll smoke some indoor, but it usually doesn't. It doesn't get me stoned for more than like 30 minutes. And if I smoke my outdoor flower, I'm high for like 4 or 5 hours. Like to the point where like the first hour, I'm like, oh, I think I smoked a little too much. And, then I'm like, okay, got to go put in work to get through it. But sun-kissed flower, I don't think that there's anything better than that. And I'm from Mendocino County. Like I was born in the best place in the world, and as far as I'm concerned, to grow cannabis. Like everybody I know moved here from all over the place just to grow herb here. And so like it's sun-kissed is the way to go. Like 100%. And people like indoor because it looks like it's got more crystals and it's a lighter color. But you've got to pay money to get, you've got to spend money on electricity. So that's not exactly helping our environment. This industry, there's too much waste, in my opinion. Like there's so much waste. And indoor, you've got even more waste because you've got the emissions, you've got the lights, you've got the intakes, the outtakes. Outdoors, you got the wind, you got the sun. You can put lights over your plants if you need to, if you have a couple days of overcast, but usually the overcast actually helps the plant speed up its process of being finished. So like if we go for a week or two and have really shitty weather, then you're going to see plants ripening faster because it's signaling to them that they're not getting the sun, which means that it's time to start signaling death. And when that happens, then they start producing more trichomes. So I think it's a good thing. Some people don't like it, but I mean, it's outdoor. It's just Mother Nature. You just got to go with it and hope for the best. And that's what sucks about it. But indoor, I just feel like I don't want to spend money to grow flower. Like I'll spend money on my dirt and my pots and my nutrients, but I don't want to spend money on electric because it's so expensive here. Like
and you're driving home that point about light restriction. I think that people don't know, indoor cultivators especially are just they have a blind eye to it in terms of ripening and its process. Like that's really cool. The other thing too is I think you are seeing that hybrid model pop up when we talk about outdoor versus indoor, whether it's outdoor hoop houses or like trying to get control of the environment, but still taking advantage of like whether it's organics or natural soil systems, or trying to take advantage of like finding that sweet spot where can I still control at least a little bit to mitigate my pest exposure, my pest risk, and at the same time take advantage of the outdoor, what you're talking about, right? Like that's the sweet spot, I think. So I'm just really curious. I like to always ask every grower I run into, like, where do you think this is going? Because it seems a little bit all over the place, at least right now.
Well, so I mean, on the West Coast, because we pay for the sun the most, especially in California. Like I do believe that this region, Mendocino County, Humboldt, Lake County, Trinity, in the next year, you're going to see, once the borders open up and the states all allow the export to each other state, these 4 counties are going to supply 90% of the United States with cannabis. We already do. We've been doing that for the last 25 years. And like, I mean, if I got pulled over in Salt Lake City and I was coming back, I was going out to Colorado with my friend, and we just finished harvesting, and we were going back to Colorado because that's where I was living at the time. And we get pulled over. Hey, buddy. Braxton, I'm on the phone. I can't help you. Give me 1 second.
So
you go ask mom. Okay, sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
But we got pulled over, and when we got pulled over, they found like $30,000 in the back of my truck. And so they immediately took me down to the station and made me explain where I got the money. And I had bank statements. I had multiple businesses. I just pulled the money out because I was transferring it back to Colorado. The head guy in Salt Lake City for the cops, whatever, he told me, he goes, we know what's going on out in California. He goes, we've got on, do you know Utah very well? Like from Nevada, when you come into the Salt Flats to Tooele. So it's about maybe 60 miles, but in that 60 miles, the sergeant told me that they've got 16 undercover officers in unmarked cars, plus another 9 troopers in state-run vehicles, and that's all they do. Their jobs are literally to profile. And they told me, they're like, we literally pull probably like 500 to 800 pounds, and maybe October through December, almost every single day, they're pulling people over. So they know what's happening. So the weed, I feel like where it's going to go is all the weed from these regions up here in Northern California, Southern Oregon, Colorado too, but their weather is not that great. So they don't have the luxury like we do of going full term. They've got to find something cheaper, but we definitely are going to supply the rest of the United States with their weed as soon as they go, because I've got at least 5 friends that have 15 to 20 acres of canopy that they're going to be doing this year. One of those guys is probably going to pull like 40 to 50,000 pounds. And
Wow.
That's insane. Like, there's so much weed, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger. But you're going to have people in the Midwest and on the East Coast all doing indoor to try and make their own money. And so they don't have to export it and pay or import it to where they are, because it's going to cost money to get it to them, period.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
yeah, I'm sure, mark my words, once the state boundaries go down and all the states are legit with it,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be an influx of craziness.
Yeah. And we're all, I think, sort of holding our breath for that, right? Because no one's really sure what kind of ramifications, what kind of cascading effects we'll have, right? So,
Right.
yeah, very cool. Yeah, so as far as like consumer taste, do you think that's changed much?
Say that again.
Consumer taste, like what people want.
Well, so it's like in the 90s when you had Snoop rapping about bubble gum and grape, and now you got Burner rapping about cookies and all these. I mean, he's a genius. Burner's a genius because he literally has cornered the market on a strain that he just keeps back crossing to other cookie families. So it's basically inbreeding his own stuff. And that's what everybody does. But he's cornered the market as to where, like, literally to buy in like seeds from him, you're like looking to spend $500 on 10 seeds, which is asinine in my opinion. And that weed's not that good. Like, it's really not that good. Like, sure, some of it is pretty rad to look at, but it's not. I mean, I'm from Mendo, so I basically tell Burner to like kick rocks, because he used to come up here and buy weed all the time from my homies all the time. And now he's just, he's this star. He's this big rapper, and he knows everybody all over the country. So, he's sending packs out to each state, to all his rapper buddies, and then they're all rapping about it. And then they're getting everybody on the train. And then all the growers are just like, dude, that stuff's garbage. Like, you could probably grow burners, cookie stuff in a light depth or indoor, but it's not going to be like the monster 15, 18-foot plant that's like 15 feet wide that's producing like 15 pounds. Like, that's what I want, 10 to 15 pound plants. And that's what I'm used to growing. But then again, it is full term. So you have to wait. Light depth, you can mimic and control the environment, control the light, so you can do it faster.
Right.
But the numbers, like if you're not in the legal sector, then you're pushing the boundaries on numbers, because the more plants you have, the more trouble you're going to get in.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so like with throughput, I think you just touched on that there, like growth, you're talking about full growth cycles. Like what I'm seeing is like some indoor cultivators, they're going for 6-month growth cycles, or growth term, I guess, from beginning to end, from clone to end. Is that different where you are from what you're seeing in outdoor?
So, I mean, usually for me, what I was taught, you pop your seeds in February, pop a bunch of them, leave them out, like don't mess with them. You probably don't need to water them. You don't need to do anything because we get rain. And so by the time April comes around, Mother's Day, really, it's right around Mother's Day is when you can actually put a clone outside and not have it worry about flipping in the flower, because it's been on an 18-hour cycle, so to speak. But as the year progresses, you're going to lose plants down the road. Like a mice is going to get some, there's always outside influences that could affect your plants. I am more a seed grower than a clone grower. I don't like clones. I like them because it's uniform. And
right.
The people that I get my seeds from, it just grows stronger. But now they're coming out with what's it called? Tissue culture clones. So, and I don't know if you're familiar with tissue culture. So what it does is, like, I've got a true OG strain. It's 27 years old. It is the gassiest of gas. It's the original. It's what everybody wanted back in the day. It's what everybody wants now when they say they want OG. Mm-hmm. That plant, over time, the leaves curl. They curl up. And there's a bug, I don't know if you know it, it's called the Russet Mite. And it's if you don't know about russets, you need to learn about them if you're a grower, because they'll decimate your crop. And by the time you realize that it's actually on your plant, it's probably a little too late, because what they do is it looks like it's deficient. Totally looks deficient. And a lot of clones tend to they get weaker and weaker as you take cuts. So you always have to redo the mothers so you keep your clone stock strong.
Right.
But those bugs, if you don't know how to mitigate the bugs, like usually seed starts don't have any problems with bugs unless they're stronger. But the new tissue culture stuff, it literally will, like, let's say somebody uses Eagle 20 or some really gnarly chemical or pesticide that what's the word I'm looking for? It's systemic. So you water it in and the plant takes it up and it's in the plant. And then when you harvest it, you're pretty much smoking it. And that's, it's all bad. So with that being said, what tissue culture does is it strips it back to its original DNA. So it takes all the bad stuff out of it, takes all the weird, like the leaf curl. I'll go back to the leaf curl. I just got it out of tissue culture probably about a month ago, and I don't see any leaf curl on it. And leaf curl is a sign of russet mites. I'm sorry, I bounced back and forth there for a second. Mm-hmm. But the tissue culture is clones. that act like seeds. So they would be like an F1 seed start, like you just pop the seed and they grow vigorous, really, really vigorous. But I still like the whole process of popping a seed and watching it grow. Like the tissue culture, you're literally, it takes like anywhere between 7 and 9 months to put one plant through tissue culture. And once you do that, you can literally take thousands and thousands of cuts, little meristem cuts, put them in the agar solution, stick it on a rack, and then they'll just start rooting out. And you can have thousands and thousands of them from one plant. It's insane. So
you have so much experience from the grower side, and I'm curious. A question for Erick actually is like, you're relatively new to the industry, and you come in at, you used to be in manufacturing. I think you're a veteran as well, and you came into the market as a salesperson. When you've had a fair amount of experience in other markets doing sales, like what are the kind of challenges that you've seen that's different in cannabis from that side, like the business side where you're trying to engage with growers and sell the products and that kind of thing? Was there anything that surprised you, or how's that been for you?
No, it's I love the industry. I think the cannabis industry is the best industry that I've ever been a part of. And I agree with Mikey that it's one of those things where it's just good people. And it feels like this industry is just one giant startup, because people like Mikey, I mean, he's got 25 years of experience in this, but for the majority of people that are in this industry, they don't have that experience, right? So I think it's something where, people are looking for knowledge a lot of times, and they're looking for, just best practices, right? And so that's really where, it's interesting to see this industry grow, because people like Mikey can provide that information, and it's more of a community aspect where people aren't necessarily holding on to information. It's something that they'll be able to freely trade with each other, and so that's something that I really like. But one of the disadvantages of this industry is that it can be really hard to reach growers, right? Because of the whole culture of where Mikey had to hide from the police, in the Manzanitas, right? I mean, it's kind of that culture is still there. So it's something that's been harder to reach people. And so that's it's been interesting, but there's been a wide range of people that we've been able to deal with, right? So, I mean, there's, like you were talking about, those craft growers, and then there's also the large scale growers. And I think that there's going to be, I think it'll be a lot like the alcohol industry, right? Where there's still the craft growers, or the craft brewers for the alcohol industry, and there's the larger scale operations as well. So I think that you're going to see all of that kind of going forward. So, but each kind of have their own, hurdles that they have to overcome.
Yeah. And on that same sort of vein for Mikey, I'm curious, because you're out there talking to growers about Toms Tumbler, and you're out there communicating, and we're building this whole mature industry. We sell software. You guys are building mechanical industrial equipment, and there's all these other services that come out, like for people that might be getting into the industry that aren't going to be growing, but are trying to like add value to growers or add value to other aspects of the market. Like, what advice would you give them in terms of engaging with growers and how to approach them day in and day out?
Well, you got to find a topic that they want to talk about, because like a majority, like Erick said, I was in the shadows and hiding for a lot of my youth growing up doing this. And it was I don't want to say it's a secret society, but your friends, if you're a good dude or a good lady and your moral compass points due north and you mean no harm to anybody and you're just trying to enjoy and live your life, like your vibe is going to attract the people, your tribe, so to speak. So everybody that I know that grows, almost all of them know somebody that I know. Like it's like this huge not underground anymore, but it used to be like an underground railroad where people would be like, oh, you got to go talk to Mikey, or Erick on 2 ridges over, he's got the cut. You need to go talk to him. And then he's like, but I don't know him. And it's like, well, here, let me put you in contact with him, but you got to pay me. You know, but now it's like everybody, at least my friends around here that have gone legal and and some that are still on the black market, they're more comfortable with speaking to people. And because I go to a ton of different farms, I talk to so many different farmers that everybody has their own way of doing things. Some people are just, they don't want to meet new people. They already have enough people that they know. But for me, I want to meet everybody that I can meet, because they literally, growing my network in this industry just means I have more opportunity. Plus, I mean, I've been doing this for, a really long time. And right when Prop 64 hit, I didn't even know what I was going to do. Like, I literally was like, oh God, I'm going to have to find a job. The price is going to plummet. I'm not going to be able to maintain the lifestyle that I've been living. And I freaked out for probably 6 months. And then finally I was like, you know what? Screw it. Like, whatever is going to come down my way is going to come my way. And I'm going to be stoked on it. And I'm going to get a job at a huge farm and be the guy that's telling everybody what to do. And I did that. And I don't want to do that anymore, because I mean, I would do it for a couple people, but now, like, knowing and what I've done and what I've been through and all the hurdles I see people jumping through, this is the most overregulated industry in our lifetime. Like, at this point, like, it's insane that they're holding cannabis and hemp growers to these standards, but yet the wine growers and the grape growers, they can spray whatever they want on the grapes, literally whatever they want. Poison, they can pull the water, if they got water rights, right out of the river, and they can take as much as they want. But yet cannabis, they think that cannabis is going to dry up this county. And it's like, if you're a smart grower, you're not going to waste water. You're going to give the plant exactly what it needs, because you don't want to waste money. And if you're wasting water, you're wasting money, because those plants need that water. And you run out of water, you're screwed. You might as well not even attempt to grow weed. And I just feel that I really feel that they need to take a step back, especially Mendocino County. Like, we should be the forefront on what they should be doing with cannabis. But our board members can't make up any kind of they can't come to any kind of agreement, because you've got 2 of them that absolutely hate cannabis. And I think I've gone to the board meeting before and I've verbalized, if you guys aren't down with cannabis, then you should get off the board member, that you should get off that chair, because the amount of money that this crop brings in should be able to save the goddamn planet. Like, I mean, because it can clean up dirt like hemp. Like, hemp can take all the bad shit out of the dirt, revitalize the soil, and then you're good to go. You plant a cover crop, you've got your nitrogen fixing cover crop that it sucks out all the nitrogen, and then you chop it up, and then you plant, and then you put it right back into the ground. It's regenerative farming. So, like, and I mean, dude, fuel, clothing, brick and mortar,
Right.
I mean,
Even
cars.
plastics.
Yeah, plastics, cars. Like, it's gonna, once the coal and the oil, maybe not the oil, but like, once everybody starts like using the cannabis or the hemp for everything else like they do with bamboo, it's gonna take over. It's gonna take over, because it only takes 6 months to grow.
Yeah.
And the amount of, like, the amount of oxygen and that it can produce when it's growing, and the CO2 enrichment, through from everywhere around you, like, it's like growing trees. You're growing trees.
Yeah.
Like,
And
Yeah.
to go back to Mikey's point too about the overregulation of the market. I mean, that's one of those things that I know that all growers are facing, and because of that overregulation, there's a lot of inefficiencies. And it's crazy in California when they were actually crafting the law. They specifically said that they didn't want the market to be as efficient as possible, because they were afraid that the growers would earn too much money and then they would be able to lobby, they'd be able to create lobby groups. So essentially they created inefficiencies in the laws to try to limit the amount of political power that growers would have. And so it's crazy, right? Because again, if you just think about even Mikey's story, right, where before kind of legalization, it was the inefficiencies were really just, the government coming and seizing your crops, right? So, I mean, you weren't really, counting your beans in terms of processes and everything like that. It was more about how to avoid detection. And now that it's become legalized, really the inefficiencies are, with that overregulation. So anytime that you can maximize your efficiencies through processes, through machines that you're using for trimming or otherwise, that's really where I think that the growers have to focus on, in terms of maximizing their operational efficiencies to help mitigate those that overregulation and inefficiencies that come from it.
And to look for the silver lining in all of those constraints, whether they're artificial or over encumbersome or whatever you want to call them, there are some, which is that we get to look to things, we get to figure out how to remove the pain that's there, right? Yep. So is it trimming? Can we make that experience better? Is it logistics and operations? Like, can software help us with compliance? Can software help us keep our teams updated and increase communication around that? Like, we get to focus on where is the pain now? Like, if the constraints are there, we have to deal with them. But at the same time, if those constraints ever go away, because the culture changes overall nationwide, then I think I'm excited. That just means we're lifting a huge hurdle or many hurdles from growers, from people who are in the cannabis industry now, to say, well, we've had to deal with these constraints and we've optimized under those constraints. Once those constraints are removed, I mean, the sky's the limit.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the amount of innovation that's going to be happening in this space is really exciting too, just because again, before there really was a constraint on innovation because of the illegality of it. Right. And now that it's at least on the state level been, legalized, I think you're going to see a lot more innovation. And so, yeah, it's just exciting to see all of that.
Well, and here's another thing, whenever they unlock the other however many cannabinoids that's in the plant, and they actually start doing testing, like the pharmaceutical companies they're probably tripping a little bit because they're not going to have the control over it, and they've got their Marinol, their synthetic cannabis, synthetic THC, whatever it is, but nothing. If you don't know where your product's coming from, I won't smoke it. Like, I don't, like, there's too many people that do like shady stuff because they're trying to cut corners. And it's like when you go into the store, I don't know about you guys, but I eat organic because that's, I'm not into processed foods, but you're going to spend more money on organics than you are on regular stuff. So like, a lot of the people don't really understand that. They're like, oh, weed's weed, and I'm like, well, it's a little different. Like, I could give you some nugs from this guy that doesn't care. He uses poison, he uses chemicals, he uses whatever he has to get through the end of the year. And then I've got my other buddy over here that literally is spending thousands and thousands of dollars to make it 100% organic because he doesn't want anybody to worry about having to, smoke some pesticides and get cancer down the road. Because, I mean, the amount of shit that we used to do back in the day before, like I've seen a lot of people straight spray poison, no mask, nothing. And some of those guys, I know they've got cancer now. Like, I mean, full on, they have cancer, lymphoma, and they're like, dude, I just don't know how I got it. And I'm like, I know how you got it. Like, I know, I've been to your house, I've been to your farm, I've seen you spray. That's how you got it. And they're not thinking about it. So like the organic, I feel like if you're going to put the money into it, you got to do it right.
Yeah. And I think to the point about innovation and all those things is like for us as a company, Alex and I, our company's called Grevera, but the future for us is like cannabis has such a great opportunity for all those things, the medicine, all these other things. But one of the things we're most excited about is that, this is like a once in a generation, maybe multiple generation opportunities where we're taking a product and we're creating a new agricultural market, or at least a legal agricultural market, against the backdrop of all these technological advances. And it's going to allow us to kind of reimagine how we even think about not just the plant and all these things about the plant, but how we think about markets, how we think about supply chains, all those things we get to reimagine. And that's just like an awesome opportunity. So we're extremely excited about that aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
And did you have something on that, Eric?
No, I mean, again, just on the innovation side, even for the growers too, it's something that, because so I smoked in high school, and I mean, it was basically just, whatever you got in the bag is what you got in the bag. Like there was no, like, let's talk about different strains and different terpene profiles or anything like that. Right. I mean, it was just, that was it. And so then obviously, it's in the military, I didn't smoke anymore. And then when I got out, kind of getting back into the industry, one of the biggest things to me that came as a, I don't know, as a shock or that development within the industry is all those different types of strains, where now you can go and you can talk about those different terpene profiles, and you can talk about, like Mike was talking about, where, where did it come from? How was it grown? And I think that that's something too, where it's going to be interesting to see where the industry goes. It's almost like, and again, where Mikey was talking about the vineyards, right? With wine, I mean, with cannabis too, it's kind of after you harvest it, you're halfway done, right? So for, some of the other staple crops like corn or whatever, I mean, once you grow it, that's it, right? It ends there. But with cannabis, it's once you harvest it, what you do after affects it almost just as much as what you did before too. So it's one of those things where, it's just, are there going to be sommeliers for, cannabis? Is that going to be something that's going to be out there?
Hell yeah. Weed sommeliers, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen that actually. There's some programs for training that actually. So that's going to be interesting to develop. So we're wrapping up just about an hour, and I don't want to be respectful of your all's time, but two questions. One is, where can we get one of those really awesome hats?
There's only two been made, and he's got the other one.
Okay. So we'll get some and send them out to you guys, because we got these made, but we'll send you guys some swag. So
okay, cool. And then people can find out more about Toms Tumbler at tomstumbler.com. Is that right?
TomsTumbleTrimmer.com. Yes. Yep.
TomsTumbleTrimmer.com.
Yes.
And we'll link to that. And when we post the show, we'll post it, a link to that. But it's been really great talking to you guys. And we really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a few technical difficulties, but this is awesome talking to you guys. Is there any last words you have to wrap up?
No, I just want to say, thank you guys for having us on the show. It's been great talking with you. It's the knowledge that you guys have and the innovation that you guys are bringing to the industry. We're excited about it. It's thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, guys.